Were not passive bystanders to the slave economy. They were co-conspirators. They bought, sold, and owned slaves. In fact, about 40% of the slave owners were white women. The more slaves a woman had, the more power she held. Parents gave their daughters more enslaved people than land. So, to a white Southern woman, owning slaves became tied to her very identity. This is the true story of how white women treated their black slaves.
Abuses.
Slavery in the U.S. lasted for more than 400 years, and in that time, the system shaped generations and generations of people. A system that created this psychological distortion. White people dominated the country. They created a violent and oppressive system to terrorize the black community. They used lynchings, beatings, and savage treatment to torment the masses. Even when there wasn't violence, there was segregation. Communities, housing, and the criminal justice system used discriminatory policies. Racism pervaded all aspects of American society. White families gained huge amounts of material benefits and privileges from this racial hierarchy. Before the Civil War in the South, American white women couldn't vote. When they got married, the husband became the head of the household, and the woman was the heart of the home. Women were considered the property of their husbands. Their mobility and freedom were severely limited. For example, if a woman wanted to travel, she would need a male chaperone. The abuse was considered a normal way to control a woman. They were expected to remain cheerful, pleasant, obedient, and faithful, while their husbands had affairs and female slaves. These women knew that the mixed-race slave children on their properties were their husband's offspring. That's why many white women wanted freedom of their own. Power to turn the narrative. That's where slavery came into play. Most people know that George Washington had slaves. They took care of his Mount Vernon home. But very few people know that Martha, his wife, was the one who drastically increased the slave population there. When the couple got married in 1759, George owned about 18 slaves, but Martha owned 84. The high number of people Martha owned might be unusual, but the fact that she had black slaves is not. She and many other white women were violent and active participants in the slave trade. Having many enslaved people increased a woman's chances of finding a good husband. After marriage, white women went to court to keep legal ownership over their slaves, and in many cases, they won. That's because, for women, slavery was their freedom. In the past, historians believed that white women didn't have a significant role in slavery. They based their conclusions on the writings of a small group of white women from the South. However, Jones Rogers, an associate professor of history at the University of California, Berkeley, used a different source: interviews with black people. Real evidence that gave her a better look at what happened during the time of slavery.
Been slaves all our lives. Your mother was a slave, your sister was a slave, father was a slave.
They know nothing about reading like that. All that I know is they teach you to mind your masters and misses.
These interviews were part of the Federal Writers Project, a branch of the Works Progress Administration. The truth is, white girls were taught how to become slave owners at a very young age. When they were just 9 months old, they grew up in a world that showed them how to control, own, and master enslaved people.
Some people didn't have no beds for their slaves. They don't sleep on the floor. Tied to them, tied down. Just like a lot of wild people, we didn't know nothing. Didn't like looking on book.
Many of their family members, even their female cousins, friends, mothers, and grandmothers, were teaching these young women how the world works. They have this property, and once they get married, this property will belong to their husband, unless they are willing to do something about it. And if that husband is a loser, so are you. So, young girls were...
What? If that man is a loser, so are you. You get your hierarchy You get all your power in society from however many slaves your family own or you own or is passed down to you as a white woman. And you taught from a little girl that this is the way it is. You get to own these people. Trade, borrow them out for loans, do what you want. They're our property. We can do whatever we want with them. Male, female, our kids. We as people, a grown man can be owned by her or him. You feel me? Passed down through the family. So instead of now it being that their generational wealth was your black ass, so now their generational wealth is banking. You know what I'm saying? The system changes a little bit, but they still own you because they own football teams and sports teams, and they have workers and things like that. It doesn't go away. It hasn't stopped. This bitch been doing whatever she want to do, and he been allowing it because he the devil. But I digress. Let's go. She about to set up a whole system to get away from him and raising these little mugs. And it's called what? Feminism.
Trained to make sure that whatever happened in their lives, they would need to ensure their success. When a white woman was old enough to have slaves, she could use her social standing to uphold and sustain that power.
See?
She could dictate the lives of those she owned and could verbally or brutally exploit her servants. What many people today may not realize is that Southern households did their best to reproduce slave society. They wanted more servants at a lower cost. White women born during these periods, whether boys or girls, would watch their parents exert dominion over their black servants. They were taught to mimic their behaviors. They were ready, smart, calculated. They knew exactly what they were doing. The book, They Were Her Property, gives us clear examples of how life back then actually looked like. The first chapter starts with Lizzie Anna Burwell, a 3-year-old who demands her father cut the ears of a black servant and get her a new maid from Clarksville. Her father would then give the girl more slaves as gifts so that they would become her property. The book reveals how women in the antebellum South could actively possess property and, in turn, lay claim to owning black servants. Legally married women were not recognized as property owners due to the coverture doctrine. This meant that a married couple was seen as having one legal identity, belonging to the husband. In Stephanie McCurry's works, Women's War and Confederate Reckoning, the coverture mirrored the private authority slaveholders held over black servants. Women had limited legal and political standing, and any attempts they made in this regard were met with significant resistance. Jones Rogers acknowledged that coverture often restricted married white women, but she also explained that Southern families frequently bypassed or overlooked these restrictions. Families could transfer property to daughters or other female relatives under the condition that it would remain separate from marital assets. Southern women could, and did, create what we now refer to as prenuptial agreements, or documents like deeds of trust, deeds of gift, and wills, which granted the wife control over all the property she already possessed or would acquire during her marriage. In Louisiana, women could ask the court to establish separate marital estates if their husbands exhibited imprudent financial management. For example, if their husband failed to budget their expenses, accumulated debt, spent too much, etc. In other words, there were two distinct systems that coexisted, a genuine patriarchy alongside an actual framework of legal and financial influence held by white women. There was a common misconception that white women were sheltered and delicate. They kept the household clean of all the impurities of the outside world. But that is absolutely not true. Slave traders, travelers, merchants, city officials, and former black slaves all attested to the presence of white women in 19th century slave markets. When slavery was at its peak, women also sold and bought black servants from the comfort of their own homes, many times within local social networks. Because of their widespread influence, white women created a completely different market of enslaved white nurses. Now, you might be wondering...
Hold on. Hold on, because this bitch got a lot of power. Okay, so not only has this woman basically created a prenuptial agreement through feminism, because she didn't want to do her job as the mother of the children and the wife of a household. She didn't want to do that shit. She was like, I'm not doing this. This is beneath me. So, okay, bam, she then created a prenuptial agreement. She wanted to be able to keep her black slaves, her black men, her black, all of us. She also wants total financial control over the things that she came into the marriage with, because if she deemed her man a loser, which in most cases, obviously these motherfuckers was, she wanted to get away from him and separate. Do as she please. The way it is now, right? She started this. She started it. So then now let's fast forward to making my black ass a single mother. This how this come in. Because she done took my man and made him her slave, her loan, her stepping stool, her doormat to get out into the free world, and his dead body be the doormat to get there. She didn't use him. Now she about to use me to raise her kids, take my ass, have me breastfeeding somebody, her kids somewhere, and raising her bad, spoiled, disgusting children. Took me from my kids. Or had me in my mind over here doing this, working for her kids. Now I'm a single mother somewhere while she got my man and using him as a loan, or it's for her divorce, or just to live her best single life and go till the fields and for sexual deviancy. But this who you like, though. This who you want, though. Let's go. Come on, let's go. Through the wonderful world of Becky. Of Amber. Okay? You heard what he said in the deep antebellum South. This is a problem. Let's go down.
Women felt the need to tear black women from their families
What?
to nurse their children.
What?
One actual report said
What?
that white women who were constantly having babies felt like a slave in their own homes.
What? She said what? She feels like a slave in her own home. So she done took my black ass like, well, bitch, I'm not about to do this. You about to do this shit. Take me from mine now, yank me from my family, order out of my home, put me right there to raise all these people, take care of he graping shit. I gotta raise these little, like, what? This bitch? This who y'all want? This who you put over me? She's so loyal. She listen. She gonna do what we say. She had your black ass doing all types of shit. Got me over here looking pissed. What the fuck going on? Make it make sense. Let's go.
Could ease that burden. So, it was easier to buy a wet nurse who would take care of such responsibilities. Depending on her financial status, the white woman could hire, borrow, or purchase an enslaved wet nurse. This gave white women the power to pursue social events, while someone else
she can kick
took care
it.
of their newborn.
So she can kick it.
But not all white women were incredibly brutal to their enslaved. They were so violent that their husbands had to restrain them. For example, a wealthy white woman often invested in enslaved men and women so that they would be forced to reproduce and give her more slaves. Historical records kept track of a woman called Henrietta Butler, who was forced to have sex with enslaved black men to have a child. She was then forced to nurse her mistress's child, but many other women suffered a similar fate. Masters often raped their enslaved servants to make sure they had an ample supply of wet nurses. White women from affluent households also ran brothels, especially the women who had many male and female slaves. By 1860, nearly half of all African slaves in the Americas were in the United States. That was
Want to know exactly
Whoa.
what's in your PO box without
Everybody in America by this time, they done got the whole 12 tribes. All of
That was
Judah.
about 4 to 6 million people.
Damn.
Based on reports from the 1860 census, 393,973 white
Woo.
individuals owned 3,950,528 black individuals. Only about 1.5% of the white population in the U.S. owned slaves. It's been over 150 years since slavery legally ended in 1865, but the true trauma wasn't just the experience of slavery, but also the aftermath, when hopes for equality and acceptance were crushed in the 1880 to 1890s due to a shift in beliefs about blacks and whites.
Okay.
In the Civil War-
This shit about to get crazy. This shit about to get even crazier. You thought it was bad then? They just get worse over time. That's all it does. It never gets better here in the pit of hell, in the Satan's booty hole. It only gets worse. It only gets, why? Because you in the pit of hell. Duh. It ain't that. You think it's about to get better? When it's all burnt up and burnt and dead, that's when it get better. Everybody dead, that's when it'll be better. Apparently. Okay. It get worse here. Deep South shit. Let's go.
Came, and it was time to free the enslaved.
Uh-oh.
Many white women retaliated.
Hold on. Karen is not about to have you taking her nakers. Okay? She just not about to have it. She just not about to have it. She'll be damned. Watch that show Them, y'all. Is it Freebie y'all been watching? Is it Freebie? It's Freebie. Watch that show Them, okay? It's a Sambo, it's like a wallpaper setting, and it's a Sambo clown face in the back trying to rip through. Watch that show. This is the nature of a certain group of people. It doesn't change. It is in, like, it's in their nature. It is in his nature. It's an inside joke. But it's in their nature to be like this. And I don't want to hear that excuse. Oh, no. Oh, shut up.
Slave owners resisted the change by letting the Union authorities know they were loyal. There were many cases where female slave owners sought compensation when the American government abolished slavery in the District of Columbia. Others wanted to keep their property by any means necessary. They went as far as to move their enslaved people away from the areas affected by the war, in a practice known as refugeeing. When the Civil War ended, many white women negotiated labor conditions with freed black people. They tried to maintain control over the young African Americans by taking their children as apprentices. Apprenticeship was another form of labor. Although it was better than complete slavery, it was still not freedom. Ex-slaves were expected to work under the same master or mistress, often for meager wages and a specific time set. Many apprentices worked for the same person that used to be their mistress, and it was not that better than the life they had before. W.E.B. Du Bois, an American sociologist, wrote something about it. He said a slave went free, stood for a brief moment in the sun, then moved back again towards slavery. This brief moment in the sun was when black communities, along with support from the Freedmen's Bureau, started establishing schools, social assistance, and some legal protections. However, this progress was largely undermined by the white Southern elite. That includes white women. They swiftly passed laws known as the Black Codes. Their goal was simple: reintroduce obligations, burdens, and restrictions that would mimic slavery. The Black Codes were designed to take away the voting rights of black people. They were meant to stop them from becoming juries or state militias. Instead, the white people would create this complex system where freed black people could still be controlled. White men and women put in place contract and vagrancy laws. They led to a popular peonage labor system. Peonage is a type of involuntary servitude based on by 1915. At least 6 former slaveholding states.
Hold on. Peonage, basically, my mama told me, mean pigging and borging. Look that up. I don't got time to explain everything. Pigging and borging, where it's a constant circle of debt they keep you in. It's servitude.
Had laws that made it possible to force black people to work against their will. For example, if a black person was found guilty of vagrancy, they were forced to work in the convict lease system. This system brought in substantial profits for the wealthy white women and men who both sold and bought the labor of those who were convicted. Experts found a memoir of a white woman called Rebecca Felton. Take a look at this colorized interview from 1929. Felton was a former slave owner who grew up during the Civil War.
I went to Washington 50 years and a little more ago. I saw all the people around there and been with the president. I was one of the board of lady managers for the Chicago Exposition. And I served my full time in Chicago.
In her memoir, she talked about the corruption in Georgia's legal system. She mentioned that there were cases where judges were elected by a dominant faction. During this time, a black person could be sentenced to hard labor for 10 years for stealing just 3 eggs or a bowl of milk. She also noted that a 15-year-old black girl in Atlanta got a 5-year penitentiary for taking 50 cents from another black child. The dominant faction made a huge amount of money, about $500,000 a year, from the convict leasing system, and judges who sent strong black people to prison had much better chances of being elected. But control wouldn't have been possible without the threat of violence. That's where groups like the Ku Klux Klan came into play. They
Let's get to it. Let's get to it.
They intimidated, brutalized, and murdered black people across the nation. The Women's KKK was a separate but affiliated racist group of white Protestant women. They got more members through empowerment feminism. The first version of the KKK emerged.
What did they do? Empowered in feminism? What? Feminism? How they do that? Where'd that come from? Okay.
In Pulaski, Tennessee, after the Civil War. It was established by men who were upset about the newly liberated black population. They were angry about their political rights and sought purpose, thrill, and a socially accepted platform where they could be violent. These early KKK members wanted something new, but they wanted to keep it under a veil of secrecy, and they did just that. The KKK created a strict organization with many ceremonies that would go perfectly with their hateful, anti-Reconstruction goals. During the starting days of the Klan, women didn't actively participate, but they did sew their husbands and family members' clothes for the ceremonies. Women also had a symbolic role to play. One of the goals of these extremists, as they saw it, was to shield pure and innocent women from the frightening black people who were now a threat. Especially in its early years, the male Klan held two conflicting views of femininity and womanhood. One was a fantasy, and the other was a concession to real people. In their minds, white Protestant women were pure, virtuous beings whose main purpose was to support and serve men. In return, men would safeguard these vulnerable ladies from those sexually aggressive black men. In the second phase of the Klan came the Women's KKK. This was a related but separate group specifically for white Protestant women. The early days of the WKKK were marked by conflicts within the Klan itself. One leader of the male Klan started a group called the Camellias. It focused on women and advocated for white supremacy so that he could increase his own influence. Another leader joined forces with a secretive women's society called the Queens of the Golden Mask. Eventually, the Golden Mask group prevailed and became the WKKK. It was the first authorized in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1923. At its height, the WKKK had branches in every state, especially in Arkansas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Indiana. Much like the male KKK, the WKKK had a structured system. Interestingly, the system had similar aspects to the Roman Catholic hierarchy. There were positions like the imperial commander, claylifts.
Rome? Did I hear Roman Catholic? Boy, man, I mean, the tentacles of this evil octopus don't stretch too far, do they? I'm just saying. Everything really leads back to the same core, evil, wicked ass source, bro. The red dragon, bro. You leave your fingerprint of evilness and wickedness, Esau, everywhere. Your prints is on everything. Your fingerprints is on everything, Esau. You and your chick, bro. Your fingerprints is on the whole wide world. On everything. You want to talk about criminals leaving prints everywhere? Y'all would know about cleaning up a crime scene and fingerprints. It take one to know one, don't it?
Clo cards, click-wraps, claybees, along with the Kletster Chlorogos. People in these positions were responsible for enforcing Klan rules. They recruited members, collected dues, organized events, and so on. But all of these rules and activities were influenced by racism, nationalism, fear of outsiders, and a determination to protect the family. In contrast to their male counterparts, the WKKK didn't often participate in lynching or other violent acts, aside from a 1924 incident where members paraded with clubs. Because of this absence of physical violence, many historians tend to see WKKK members, as well as women in racist movements in general, as obscure and relatively unimportant figures. They just see them as people who worked in the background of their men.
No.
But the fact is, the women KKK was very powerful. They were excellent manipulators. They used their social standing to further improve their agendas. Many of these members had organized social clubs before, so it was super easy for them to spread the word.
Okay. Because Becky good at having social clubs. Because that's what she did back in the 1800s when she was making me nurse her kids. Remember it said that in the video. To go out, kick and make social clubs, social events, always on the scene. They the ones that invented on the scene. Was Becky. She invented the scene. She always out doing something. Why you think your women is busybodies? We always out doing something. Girls trips, social club, all this shit. This was all constructed by a Becky. When you really look at it.
Reputations of political candidates.
And then you had a man's with they secret boys clubs doing weird shit. That combined, they have now evil rituals. Or their God is Lucifer. Or Satan or whatever the hell you want to call him. Weird shit.
Or anyone else they deemed unworthy. These women tried to remove Catholic public school teachers, organized boycotts of businesses, and supported candidates who were aligned with the Klan. They increased their influence for providing...
Don't that sound like Blue Bloods today? They all lined up with people that in line with the Klan and that in line with the evil, wicked, one world, new world order government. All hands on deck. I told you, it takes everybody to participate in this. White people, you cannot opt out. In order for racism and for the system to exist, how many people got to participate in it? Everybody. Y'all, even when you're not participating in it, in this Edomite system, Edomites, you still participating in this Edomite wicked system. Some of y'all participation doesn't matter if you're involved or not, because they've got everybody that they need through the legal justice system. I call it the illegal justice system. Through food, through space, through music, through movies, through everything, healthcare. They have everybody put in place in their evil little system. I was watching the movie The Omen, and they had snuck into this big church backyard. It looked like where they had them little rituals back in the backyard of Yale. It was grass and all this shit was around, right? And all these people had gathered and was chanting Damien's name or whatever. And they was watching. It was like, dude, that's the whole town. People then flew in from different parts of the world, from different countries, just to come to this meeting, this ritual at this old church in the backyard at nighttime at 3 a.m., of course, the devil's hour. And they was all chanting this, yes, world domination. They was all sitting around chanting and doing this ritual. I've seen that in that movie. People from all walks of life. People that you would never see together in public, getting along. But they all came together for this evil, wicked one night. This chanting and summoning this evil spirit, though. What I'm saying is it's all in line. It all goes back to the 1800s. It all goes back. Whatever they did back then, they gonna do now, just as an upgraded point. That's all it is now. Nothing new under the sun. How Becky was back then, with her cake fucking parties and her tea parties and shit, they did that then, and they do it now. It's just upgraded, different time frame now.
Food baskets to needy families. They also arranged events like weddings, funerals, speeches, parades, christenings, carnivals, and lectures. By organizing both ceremonial and social activities, these women integrated the Klan and its beliefs into the everyday life of American society. In their minds, all of this
has been integrated into American life and social society. It's what this is. And y'all have taken it as the norm. We all have at some point participated in this bullshit that she set up. Grandmothers, mothers owned you. And now you want to date and love on the enemy. It's sick. And it's weird. And it's got to stop.
people were a part of the Klan. These groups were unsettling, precisely because they seamlessly blended with small towns. In America, WKKK didn't attract women because it was something new or unusual. No. It was popular because it aligned naturally with the lives of white Protestant Americans and their values and traditions. Many of these women viewed the Klan as a social club, an opportunity to have a good time with friends. But their shared commitment to racism and xenophobia was terrifying. Many of these white women were conservatives to the core. They were dedicated to the cause and had power within their communities. Some of these women were also active outside their homes.
I seen that sign before. I seen
And their
that.
values and traditions.
Hold on,
Many of these women viewed the Klan as a social club, an opportunity to have a good time with friends. But their shared commitment to racism and xenophobia was terrifying. Many of these white women were conservatives to the core. They were dedicated to...
I've seen this before. I've seen that sign before. Oh my God. Remember on my last video, a couple videos ago when I first started, and I was in that church, and I went up into that back room, and I found them black robes, y'all, and it was in the closet, and it was hanging up, and I was like, what's this sign? What is this signal? This sign? And it was like a triangle, and like a circle, or a triangle within a triangle, or a circle within a triangle. Remember that. What the hell?
The cause and had power within their communities. Some of these women were also active outside their homes. Lulu Markwell, for example, was the first national leader of the WKKK. She worked for women's suffrage in Indiana and other states. Daisy Douglas Barr led the Klan, but was also an esteemed Quaker preacher. This means that they had a huge impact on a much broader scale. As you can see, white women were not bystanders when it came to slavery and the slave trade. They were very much involved in the system as their male counterparts. The only thing is that many of these women were believed to be innocent and pure, while in fact, they had their own agendas and were proud to own slaves. They benefited from the slave market and wanted to expand their own riches. After all, they too were born in a system that exploited black people. This system shaped their morals, ethics, and values, creating wide-scale oppression and brutality.
And that's that on that. That is that on that. I just want to say, it's been real, Becky. Shalom.